BBC becomes the Boris Broadcasting Company. Pretty bad ideas at the Home Office. And COVID gets a hat trick. These are the interesting times. Hello everybody, my name's Matt Johnston and welcome to The Interesting Times, a show that likes to take a sideways swipe at politics right here in the UK. Now, it's fair to say that some of the newspapers we have in this country have been pretty right-wing. Here is the Daily Mail from a few years back. See if you can spot a pattern. Yes, more xenophobic, anti-immigrant and just plain racist than the Jim Davidson tribute act headlining for the Black and White Minstrel Show. Not only that, but it's fair to say it was pretty pro-leave. The headline the day before the referendum read, "Lies, greedy elites or a great future outside a broken, dying Europe. If you believe in Britain, vote leave." I know, subtle, right? What could be the message they're trying to convey? And it's fair to say that they've happily supported the Tories the last few decades. But that was back in 2018 when the Daily File was run by this bloke, Paul Dacker. And then we had the Telegraph, Charles Moore, or to give him his man the people name, Baron Moore of Etchingham. And in 1982, following the Brixton riots, Moore interviewed elderly white and only elderly white residents of Lambeth and followed it up with a piece, which included the lines, "The native population of Lambeth feels little natural sympathy with the West Indian arrivals. The old people of Lambeth can see with their own eyes that they are surrounded by people more primitive than they, who lack their respect for law and privacy." Fucking wow. But come on, Matt, I hear you say, that was 1982, a different time. I'm sure he's realised the stupidity of thinking and saying this crap. Saying it? Sure. Thinking it? Well, in 2007, he joined a centre-right think tank called the Policy Exchange, who were found to have faked a report on Islam extremism in Britain. He said that the EDL were a reactive and non-violent organisation, and that equal marriage is similar to wanting to marry your dog. He's implied that Liz Kendall or Yvette Cooper wouldn't be pretty enough to win a general election, and that Olivia Colman had too much of a left-wing face to play the Queen. Now, I know what you're thinking. How did Boris miss this guy? Surely he's going to be doing Boris's daily briefings. Well, no, not quite. Because it's looking like More the Merciless is being lined up, asked by the blobbist to be chairman of the BBC. Pretty surprising considering he's not that much of a fan.
Because, of course, one of the amazing things that the BBC manages in its unbiased approach is that here we are 5 people on the panel and only one of them's pro-Brexit, that's me. Again and again on this programme, the balance totally fails to reflect the wider country.
And indeed, stopped paying his licence fee one year as he disagreed with the BBC's political stance. Add to that, the new Director General of the BBC is Tim Davie, who appeared on Tuesday via link in front of the Digital, Culture, Media and Sport Committee.
Does anyone else want to declare anything?
Yes. My love of that picture in the background. What is it? It looks like an impressionist impression of the Bristol stool chart. I'm assuming they have this so that everybody can see what sort of shit he came up with. Phew, you might want to leave it for a bit. About 4 years, I'd say. Return of the wig. So, on to the nitty-gritty.
Is this just a simpler way of recognising the criticism that was made by the Secretary of State when he said that the BBC was too woke? Is that correct? Are you now saying, effectively, that the Secretary of State had a point?
Isn't the problem here that the Secretary of State uses terms like woke as a form of playground insult? A term, by the way, which means alert to injustice in society, particularly racism. Is that the problem? We're not racist enough?
Did you think that the BBC's coverage of Brexit in any way broke trust with certain parts of the UK public, particularly in the north of England, as reflected in the general election of December 2019?
Simple answer, yes. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. In the referendum, a third of people didn't vote, a third voted in, a third voted out. If you produce a pro-Brexit piece of telly, you're going to alienate at least a third of the country. And the same for a pro-EU programme. You're not going to please everyone. I was going to say just do a programme about cats, but that would alienate the dog lovers, about 50% of the population. If you did a pro-Scottish independence piece, you would alienate about 50% of the Scottish population that don't want it. Do the same for a union piece, you'd alienate the other 50%. I appreciate it doesn't always work. Like if you did a John documentary or you did an Edward documentary or you shut them both together, you'd probably alienate about the same number of people. So he's the new Director General. Charles Moore looks to be chairman of the Beeb. But don't worry, if you're unhappy with the output of the BBC, you can always complain to Ofcom, who are going to have a new chairman. Looks like Boris building back better his own echo chamber. Hello? Is that Jim Davidson? Are you busy? You know, people say there are no bad ideas. Well, the Home Secretary, Priti Patel, is doing her damnedest to blow a hole in that particular theory. The latest offering was just to have asylum seekers held offshore while their applications are being processed at Ascension Island. That's right, the island in the South Atlantic, basically the hemisphere we're not in. These are the Ascension Islands Golden Beaches, and it's 4,000 miles away, making it further away from the UK than Venezuela. The idea hasn't become reality, you'll be glad to hear, although that only seemed to have come about as a member of the Island Council there described it as likely to be a logistical nightmare. And the Shadow Home Secretary, Nick Thomas-Symonds, tweeted that the ludicrous idea was inhumane. Presumably, knowing the government's penchant for daft ideas and dislike of asylum seekers, maybe their thinking would be that they would get deep vein thrombosis. She's also been considering a wave machine to push the boats back and using abandoned ferries to hold the asylum seekers while their applications are being processed in what has been described as blue sky thinking by the department. And as any Brit will tell you, blue sky thinking doesn't work. Not in this country, you only need to stick your head out the front door to know that. Trump-Biden's first, I want to say debate, took place on Wednesday, and it's fair to say it went about as well as people expected. In other words, not very. In fact, there are bus stops in Croydon that have seen more constructive and enlightening discourse. Trump interrupted Biden something like 70 times. Certainly enough times for Biden to say what we've all been thinking for the last 4 years.
Will you shut up, man? Listen, who is...
But Trump was gifted the most straightforward question of the night. Will you denounce racists? To which he responded, no. So, for those feeling that they're unable to face any more horrendous hate-filled hubris, I have some good news.
The president and first lady are positive for COVID-19.
And bad news.
The White House says the president has mild symptoms with no further description.
And I don't think the great man could have put it any better.
It is what it is.
What that means is there are now 3 populist leaders now who have played down the infections, as mentioned already on this show. Can you see yourself as the Incredible Hulk? Well, we've already elected the Incredible Bulk. And in the US, the Incredible Sulk. But a touch of deadly deja vu. A populist leader talks about how coronavirus is no big deal. A little chance of catching it, catches it. Will look great with new background. Anyway, the question has to be, who's next? Erdogan or Modi? Place your bets now, ladies and gentlemen. And speaking of all things COVID, the British governments have been having a bit of trouble getting their message over about the virus. South of the border, the blobbist got himself confused.
It's 6 in a home or 6 in hospitality, but as I understand it, not 6 outside.
He's clearly got 6 on the brain. Well, it's not 6 inside either, and it's not 6 in hospitality. Look, I know it's confusing for you. There's a lot to think about. But can you imagine how the rest of us feel? The COVID rules seem to be different in every part of the country, and they change more often than Brexiteers' arguments. And he didn't make things any better by suggesting to BBC journalists that it was lack of discipline and not tests that led to the second wave we're seeing. Tell me about it. Johnson has faced extra heat this week, most notably from within his own party, about his handling of the virus.
Actually, I'm not sorry that I'm angry, because a lot of people in this place are angry. We want to see this virus beaten, of course we do, but it would be nice, just nice, if this House was shown some respect.
Than a year ago, I celebrated what I thought was the election of a sceptical and liberal Conservative administration. And now I'm left wondering if the Prime Minister hasn't been abducted by Dr. Strangelove and reprogrammed by the sage over to the dark side.
Pretty sure that ship has already sailed. I imagine Boris is about halfway to Ascension Island by now. But Boris did surface just long enough to say this.
That tries to keep the economy going as much as we possibly can, keep schools open, but also depresses that R. And the way to do that is for us all to follow the guidance that people know, and really to think very carefully about not transmitting the virus to your neighbours.
Well, glad that's cleared up then. Look, this should be straightforward. So firstly, we only have two sides, an inside and an outside.
Dark side.
I stand corrected, all right, but for the non-Tories, we only have an inside or an outside, so two options. Then, number of people will be between 2 and 12, because less than 2 is self-isolating, and above 12 discounts everything apart from a sugar-based reunion. And finally, there are only 3 types of space: private, public, and personal. And you've already dealt with the personal space. For a man who won an election less than a year ago on a 3-word slogan, he's managed to make this extremely complicated. But at least he can rely on his dad to completely screw things up. Yep, that's him in a shot without a mask. And things haven't been exactly plain sailing north of the border. This is the SNP MP, Margaret Ferrier, speaking in the House of Commons on Monday.
Chancellor's announcement last week simply doesn't do enough to support those people whose jobs are at risk due to the pandemic.
Do you know who else was in danger of losing their job? Margaret Ferrier, who gave that speech having gotten COVID symptoms 2 days before and not self-isolating. She's subsequently been kicked out of the SNP, but they don't have the power to stop her being an MP, although both Nicola Sturgeon and Ian Blackford have called on her to resign. Quite right. But what is it with people going the length of the country with this disease? Dominic Cummings went from London to Barnard Castle. This lady went from London to Glasgow. Maybe that should be included on the list of symptoms. Coughing, fits, lack of smell and taste, and wish to go sightseeing across the country. Well, that's it for another week. Thank you so much for watching. If you are enjoying these vids, please do subscribe and hit the notifications bell as well. Make sure you don't miss another. And I'll see you all next Monday. Take care.